Hi guys, it's M0TIG, Gary, and I've been asked a few times what the difference is between, say, Raspberry Pi and what an Arduino, and I thought today I'd just sort of do a little bit of a test video, funny enough. Just got a little setup here, I'll just give it a go. So I thought I'd just discuss roughly what the two different things do, and maybe we'll talk about sort of some of the additions you can put on, like the screens, say, for instance, and some of the add-on boards maybe. So first of all, let's look at the Arduino. Now an Arduino is pretty much, it's not really a computer. It's like a programmable board which repeats the same thing pretty much over and over again. You can have some input from external switching or buttons or controls or signals or whatever. This is completely self-contained. There's no software particularly on it. It's pretty much hard programmed and away it goes. There are some additions you can put on here. You can get sensors and all sorts of things for this. And these are very, very popular, say for something like, I don't know, they did recently on Know-How, a water sprinkler system, or maybe I think they also did an illuminated picture frame. They're really, really good for just automated purposes. Fabulous. No real sort of input from a user needed, and that essentially is it. It's just hardwired and away you go. There are some additional things you can put on these. This is pretty typical. This is a breakout board, so that you can, rather than keep pushing pins into these contacts, you can actually load this on here, and that will actually give you then the ability to just put like wire into these things and just screw them down, and it gives you some idea with the power on. It extends the reset up to the top. Fairly handy, but it also gives you a prototyping area as well. For instance, if you want to stick extra components on, I don't know, whatever you're doing, you can. Maybe LEDs, you know, whatever you like, really. You know, it gives you a lot of options. Okay, so that's pretty much it with that one. Oh, one other thing, you can put like little screens on here, and actually I've got one little project which I'm actually looking at doing using one of these screens, actually on a Raspberry Pi, which I'll talk about in a second. It's actually an internet radio. Okay, so right, swiftly moving on. Okay, let's look at Raspberry Pi. Now this is a Pi 3, pretty typical. Again, you've got a GPIO output on these. The difference with these over the, say, an Arduino is that these actually have an operating system. The user typically has to do something to start a program or whatever it might be, or put some input in. They're not typically automated, although you can make them sort of automated. They're just slightly different to the Arduino. These are really useful for making things like media players, for instance, or we you know, in the radio ham community, we typically use them for running, say, a dongle or something like that. Now I use these for all sorts of things, including network, you know, sort of connectivity and bits and pieces. Very, very useful device. Comes with an Ethernet port on, USB ports. These are actually a small computer and can be used, you know, exactly the same way. There are loads of things you can do with these, and you can add, if you wish, things like these, which is a typical LCD screen. I normally like to keep these to the same sort of makes, and the one that I probably would use the most are the WaveShare ones, because it seems to be that there's quite a lot of user support for these. A lot of people tend to use these, so that any of the code that you need is quite common, and you know, you can get these up and running fairly easily. They're not the easiest things if you're not careful um, with the code to actually get running, because there's so many different drivers for them, depending on where you get them. Some of them have switches on. Okay, so if you do find you've installed one and you've got no picture, do check them very carefully, because one or two do have switches on, and I can actually show you one of those which I've installed. They're spare ones I actually have. I was actually trying different displays to try and get them to work, but here's one I prepared earlier. You'll notice this one actually has a little switch, and what that does, it turns the backlight on and off on the display. So if you think you've actually got the code correct and it's still not illuminating, do check to see if there's a switch hidden away. Okay, but this is another Pi 3, but just in a different case with that one. What we'll also do is actually look while we're here. Let's look at this one's actually quite interesting. This one is a LattePanda. This is the 4 gig version, 64 gig built on memory. So it's got 4 gig of RAM and yeah, 64 gig of eMMC memory on board. Really, this is essentially a Windows 10 computer. Has Windows 10 installed on it. On top of that, okay, this actually has built on board one of these. So that has a coprocessor, which is an Arduino, and that's all built in. If we pop the lid off, you can actually see the accessory ports. It's got display ports. You've actually got your Arduino output here and there. In fact, actually, that's the Arduino output. That one down the side there, the small one, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can just see it down there. That one is actually direct output for the CPU on this, the Windows CPU. So you can actually go quite, you know, to get some good sort of outputs, real sort of base level from this. But this has the Arduino software built on the actual install, and I mean, it's a fabulous bit of kit. You can see I've actually installed a fan on this one because it was actually getting quite warm. It has an Ethernet port. It has an SD card. It runs on 5 volts, and that could be one of the limitations. You can't get, once this starts getting or starts being pushed to the limit, it does start really drawing a fair bit of current, I think. And I've just got a sneaky suspicion that this might be just on the edge of the 5 volts or power supply type things. I mean, I use the Raspberry Pi 3 power supply, which seems to keep up quite well, but I think it could do with it being a little beefier. But the real big surprise with this is here, where you've actually got 2 USB ports, but you've also got 1 USB 3. When that's quite incredible. Plus you've got HDMI. Again, very usable little bit of kit. Nice. Okay, well, that's pretty much a very quick overview of all the little PC things and different bits and pieces that I've got and I've been asked about. As I say, you know, let us know if you need anything, any info on other bits and pieces. Just leave comment below or whatever it might be, and I'll try and answer the questions best I can. Thanks for watching.